In today's video, we're going to learn how to order numbers from greatest to least, or from least to greatest. Yesterday, we learned about comparing numbers with the symbols greater than, less than, and equal to, and we were comparing two numbers. Now we're going to look at three or more numbers and see if we can put them in order from either least to greatest or greatest to least. In order to be successful with this lesson, we need to know that greatest means the biggest or largest number, and least is the same as the smallest or the fewest amount. We can also think of this as on a hundreds chart. The least or fewer numbers are at the top. They're the smaller numbers. These are the lesser numbers. And then the greater numbers, they have the bigger value or towards the bottom. So when we're putting them in order from least to greatest, we'd be thinking about the number that we would count them in, starting at the smallest number, the least amount, and going down to the bigger amount or the greatest. If we're talking about the greatest to the least, we'd start at the biggest number, and then it'd be like we're counting backwards, what would go down to the smallest number. So let's look at an example. If I have the numbers 24, 17, and 92, when I'm going to compare these numbers, I need to look first at the tens place. So looking at the tens place on each of these, I'm going to underline those. These represent the amount of tens that are in the number. It's important to look at these first when we're comparing numbers or ordering numbers because that's going to tell me what order they go in, and it'll be easiest to tell with the tens place first. So we have 2 tens in 24, 1 10 in 17, and 9 tens in 92. So if I am ordering them from least to greatest, first I'm going to start at that group of 10, the tens place. I'm going to find the smallest amount of tens. So if I look at these numbers, I see that the number 17 has the smallest amount of tens. It has 1 10. So I know that 17 would be the smallest number. It would be the least. If I look at what's coming next, I have either 24 or 92. So looking at the tens place, I see that we have 2 in the tens place or 9 in the tens place. When I'm counting up, least means the smallest. I want to know what the next biggest number would be. So the next biggest number would be 24 because it has 2 tens. I can stop here and check myself by using those symbols we used to compare yesterday. If I'm doing least, then I should be able to say that 17 is less than 24. And that's true. 17 is less than 24. Then finally, my greatest or largest number is the one with the biggest amount of tens. That would be 92. So next would come 92. And again, I can check because this would be true. 24 is greater than 17, but it's also less than 92. So it's in between those numbers. Let's take a look at another set of numbers because sometimes it gets a little bit more tricky than just looking at the tens place. Again, I'm going to start by underlining my tens just to see what they are. I see I have 7 tens in 78, 2 tens in 22, and 7 tens in 73. So I'm thinking about the least to the greatest. What's the smallest number to the biggest number? So I can easily see that the smallest number is 22 because it only has 2 tens, and I know that 2 is a smaller number than 7. So I know that I need to start with 22 as the least number, the smallest number. But this is where it gets kind of tricky. So I did that one already. I have 78 and 73, and what I'm noticing about these numbers is that they both have a 7 in the tens place. So instead of just looking at the tens place, I'm going to need to look at the ones place. So in the ones place, I have an 8 and a 3. So if I'm starting with the smaller number, I want to look at which one has the smaller number in the ones place. Which one would that be? Whisper it to yourself now. You're right, it's 73. 3 is smaller than 8, so I know that that one's going to come next. Then finally, my biggest or greatest number comes last, which would be 78. I can also order numbers from the greatest first to the least. So the biggest number would come first in this case, and then the smallest number would come last. So in order to do this, I do the same thing. I'll just be looking for the bigger number that goes first. So I'm going to underline my tens to look at those first. I see that these ones are all different, so I can stop there as I'm looking. I don't have to look as carefully. I see that I have 2 for 24, 1 10 and 17, and 9 tens and 92. Which one is the greatest or the biggest number? Pause now and see if you can put them in order from greatest, the biggest, to the least, the smallest. You can use a whiteboard and a marker. Now that you've paused and tried it on your own, let's see if it matches. If I'm looking at the greatest, I need the biggest number. So 9 is the biggest number in the tens place. So 92 would go first. Next, I'm going to look at the next biggest, or what would be the next one that would be closest to the smallest. So 92 would be the largest. If I'm looking between 2 tens and 1 10, I know that 2 tens is bigger. So 24 is going to go next, which leaves me with the smallest number, or the least amount, which would be 17. Pause the video and try this one on your own on your whiteboard. Now that you've paused and tried it on your own, let's see if your thinking matches mine. Again, I'm going to look at the tens place first. 83, 91, 34. It's the greatest first, which is the biggest number. I can also think of that as greatest is longer than least, so it's the bigger number with the more letters is more higher number. The highest number I see in the tens place is 9, so 91 would be the greatest, followed by 83 because 80 is more than 30. So 83 would come in the middle. And then finally, the least amount, or the smallest number, is going to be 34. Pause and try this one again as well. Last one, but this time, look carefully. It's least to greatest. Sometimes it's going to change on you, so pay careful attention to what order it's asking you to do. Pause now and write it on your whiteboard. Okay, now that you did it on your own, this one's a little bit more tricky. So I'm starting with my tens place. I want the least, so I want the smallest number first. 6 tens, 6 tens, 4 tens. 4 is the smallest number, so I know 42 is going to be the least amount, the smallest number. As I get bigger, I see that my tens are the same in my next number, so I have to look at the ones. If I'm going least to greatest, smallest to biggest, I want the smaller number in the ones place next. 65, 5 is a smaller number or a lesser number than 7, so I know that 65 comes next, followed by 67. So as you're working today, make sure you're looking carefully first at the tens place, and then you might need to look more carefully and closely at the ones place to also help you.